All right, it's 5 o'clock. We'll call the Administration Committee meeting for October 11th, 2022 to order. Roll call, please.
Supervisor Counter.
Present.
Supervisor Long.
Here.
Supervisor Cook.
Present.
Supervisor Burning.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Next item, approval of the minutes, Tuesday, September 13th. They were in the packet. Any changes to the minutes? That's past me. All right, any changes to the minutes? No? All right, then we'll leave those standing. Next item, public comment. I do have one comment card here. Judy Achterhoff.
I assume with the blue light it's already on? Okay. Judy Achterhoff, 1759 County Road, Emerald, Wisconsin. And I'm addressing briefly two areas in regards to St. Croix County continuing to provide two hotspots for each library in the county. One area is broadband. St. Croix County is trying to help get broadband access throughout much of the county. It takes a long, long time, though, from the initial planning to reality, and still may be financially unattainable for many citizens of St. Croix County. Access to the internet via library hotspots has remained consistently high. Until the libraries start seeing a lessening of hotspot demand, St. Croix County would be doing a disservice to those citizens who utilize and/or depend on the library hotspots if St. Croix County ceases to provide the two per library. The second area is funding. Monies for the hotspots have been taken from county contingency funds and a special library levy. Either we could go back to one of these methods or perhaps use some of the fund balance. St. Croix County has a healthy fund balance, or at least it did last year when I was a supervisor, and I can't believe it would change that much in 1 year. The approximately $8,700 per year for the hotspots is like a drop in a bucket of the total fund balance. There may be even more ways of funding the hotspots that I'm unaware of. All I know is that I feel that hotspots are very important to many citizens of all ages in St. Croix County. Now is not the time to take away internet access, especially since we are at the same time trying to expand internet access. Kind of contradicts each other. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Any other public comment? All right, we'll close public comment. Next item, business items. Financial report for September 2022. Ken.
The financial report is in your packet. I'll catch up here in just a second. Everything is continuing to look good, so I'll entertain any questions that you have. Sales tax remains strong, as I mentioned at the last county board meeting. All the departments are on track to finish their budget within budget through the end of September. Kind of the same speech I always give, but everyone's above average, and I forget exactly how that saying goes, but probably the only thing that will be over budget is that retirement health savings account, but I think we've talked about that one enough. If there's no other questions, then.
Anyone have any questions? All right. Move on to the next item, resolution providing compensation adjustment for judicial assistant. And this is Audrey.
Yeah, so this is a pay adjustment request from Judge Needham, Nordstrom, Black, and Waterman for existing employee Ryan Griffin. The judges are requesting a pay increase for Ryan from grade 60, step 5 to step 8. That will be an annualized pay increase of $3,188. This request is being made to rectify a pay equity issue between judicial assistants. Ryan currently has more direct job and county experience than his new counterpart and is performing additional job duties as the JA to the presiding judge, but is being paid less than the newest judicial assistant. The discrepancy is mainly due to the fact that the new JA received a pay increase from a step 5 to a step 8 as part of the compression study that was completed earlier this year when she was working for the clerk of court's office. At the time of the compression study, there were no compression issues brought forward for the judicial assistants, but this has now changed as the long-term JA recently retired and a new JA replaced that position.
I might just add that Ryan had also been in the clerk of court's office before moving over to be a JA. 2 years ago, 3 years ago now?
All right, any questions from the committee? No questions? Is there a motion?
Motion to approve compensation adjustment for judicial assistant.
All right, motion by Burning, second by Long. Any other conversation? Nope. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. All right, item number 3, consideration of request to fund library hotspots. And this is Ken. Will provide some background for us.
Yeah. So the library resolution that was approved earlier this fall was just for the Act 150 basic requirements of the state statute. So when we talked about it a couple of months ago, we started with just the basis, which is what I always do, and then if a supervisor asks for things to be added on, things are added on. So previously we had the broken promise deal that was added on, redistribution of Hudson library taxes, that was not on there, and then the hotspot funding was not on there. The 2 previous years had been on the resolution, and prior to that it was funded through contingency funding. So that's how it came about 4 years ago. So as Judy Achterhoff, citizen at large, had mentioned, it has been funded by different ways, and it still can be. So really you have, I think, 3 choices that I would say. We can not fund the hotspots, saying that trial period has passed on. If the libraries want to continue it, they can continue it. 2, you can fund it via the library levy. There's a whole bunch of things that have to change between now and November 1st, but it's still possible. I would have to have a resolution on that November 1st agenda, though, modifying the library distribution. Or 3, you could approve it, but just say that we're going to request it to come out of unassigned fund balance. That would be the other funding option that I would recommend for it. So I think those are the 3 choices in front of you, and the background of how we got here, why it wasn't on the original resolution.
All right, and I know that Barbara Kruger is here, and she asked if she could speak to this item, and I said, how don't you do that?
Barbara Kruger, 1943, Highway 46, New Richmond, Wisconsin. And I'm the director at the Deer Park Public Library, plus I'm the chair of the County Library Committee, Planning Committee. And as Ken mentioned, the third option was funding from unassigned funds, which when the proposal that the county fund Wi-Fi hotspots originally came before the administration committee in 2018 was how the hotspots were funded. And that agreement at that time was to fund 2 hotspots for each of the 11 libraries for 2 years. So the amount of the request, what the cost of the hotspots is $29.75 per hotspot per month. So it's $357 a year per hotspot. So for each library to have 2 of the hotspots, it's $714 for a total of $7,854 to fund 2 Wi-Fi hotspots for each of the 11 libraries. Now, the sheet that I passed out, and I think Ken has the chart available. This chart shows the circulation of the hot spots. There's 3 different colors. The blue indicates hotspot circulation to individuals who reside in a municipality with a public library. The orange is to residents of St. Croix County who reside in a municipality without a public library. And then the gray is the total number of circulations. Now, 2020, of course, with COVID-19, the libraries being closed for several months, our numbers were significantly lower. But we are on track. The numbers are through September for this year, for a year to date. So through the end of September, so we have October, November, and December left yet for hotspots to circulate to. We also asked some people for stories, because that's what connects us to our users. Even if it's on a temporary basis. In one of the communities, rewiring was being done in some neighborhoods. So replacing telephone poles, digging up ground wires, and so they were losing their connectivity. They would have it, they couldn't depend on it. A patron was able to use a hotspot to work from home with a more reliable connection while the work was being done. One patron listed off 3 points about being able to check out hotspots, why it's important to her household. Without the hotspot, we wouldn't have access to internet since we live in the country. It's needed to do homework and to work from home for the adults. Without the hotspot, they would not have any internet. There are people who may have access to internet, but they're at the end of the line. And their DSL, if they do have it, is so unreliable. Most of the patrons who use hotspots are so grateful that we have them. If the county decides not to continue funding the hotspots for another year at least, there are 7 of the libraries that will be discontinuing the 2 hotspots that are funded by the county. They don't feel that they can work their budgets in order to continue to offer those. Deer Park is a prime example. We're, the smallest library, the smallest municipal library in the state, but we provide a service to our users. We'll go from 3 hotspots, which have right now, as of today, 11 holds, will go down to 1 hotspot. So our users will have to wait an even longer period of time before a hotspot would be available to them. And as I said, 6 of the other libraries would be discontinuing offering those 2 extra hotspots. One of the libraries, Glenwood City, right now currently has 4. They would drop the 2. Their other 2 are funded by a grant, and when that ends, they wouldn't have any hotspots to use, provide to their users. So that's why we're making this request.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Barbara? Oh, Supervisor Long?
So I guess I'm looking for some more specific, information.
Okay.
The results of the trial. In other words, what was the impact incrementally of libraries having additional 2 hotspots? Mm-hmm. And I just want to, and I'm also curious, how many hotspots do all the other libraries have? And will 2 make a difference? And if the libraries are going to discontinue the ones that they're funding, have you discussed it with your local municipality in terms of continuing those hotspots?
Okay. I don't know if the other communities have discussed it. Monica is here from, Lavole is here from New Richmond. As I said, some of them have discussed it with their library boards, and the library boards have said, they don't see that we have the wiggle room in our budgets to continue to fund them. In total, there are 72 hotspots, with River Falls having the largest number of 26. And they have a grant that is funding a number of their hotspots. I know New Richmond has had more hotspots in the past. If you don't mind, Cara, if Monica comes
go ahead.
up also.
Hi, sorry. Monica Lavold, I am the director of New Richmond Public Library, and I can speak to, so we had 19 hotspots during the height of COVID. We are currently down to 7 hotspots. 5 of our hotspots are funded by our Friends of the Library. Those will continue. However, if we do lose county funding, I believe it's important enough to have hotspots that I will keep the 2 hotspots and reallocate money from other parts of our budget. In New Richmond, we have enough wiggle room in the budget that I can pull that from another area of service. It does mean there will be some area that gets short funded, but I think this is important, and I think it does matter. One of the things that I can speak to is 7 hotspots. I currently have,
You have 22 holds.
I was gonna say, I think it's 24 today. I think I looked today.
22
It
at
was
the time.
22 that I emailed you.
Yeah. Well, we went in and looked.
Right? On an average, so that's an average of more like 3 to 4 people on hold per hotspot, which means citizens of New Richmond are waiting a month or more from the time that they request a hotspot till the time they are even able to get it, to take it home. I do know that it is used at home. Hotspots are also used for travel, they're used for business presentation, they're used for work. There's a variety of ways that they support the life of the residents of the county.
And just one point I want to clarify, it's not just residents of New Richmond. It can be residents from anywhere in the county who are on the holds list, because we have people who bounce back and forth between New Richmond, Somerset, Deer Park, trying to get and coordinate hot spots to be checked out so that they have them available.
Those hotspots, do they count as a circulation item when you check them out?
Yes, they do count as a circulation item. Now, the only ones that would be, that we would be indirectly receive funding for under Act 150 would be the ones going to someone who's in a municipality without a library. And if you look at the cost per circ of an item, that does not begin to come close to cover the cost of the subscription for a hotspot.
How long do they have the hotspots when they check them out?
14 days.
Okay.
And they'll tell you that goes by so fast.
Yeah, so your average
And-
circs are running $5-6 per circulation, so, yeah, right. So the orange column, though, we are paying for currently, that's within the Act 150. So basically, orange is Act 150 that the county pays 100% for. Yeah.
And Mr. Long, I'm sorry, I don't remember your other questions.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I kind of
Oh, no, that's fine.
put a couple of them together, my apologies. I guess 2 things. One, I'm really interested in all the libraries and how many hotspots they have and how many, the 2 additional, how much. I'm trying to determine how much of an impact did the additional 2 have on all of the libraries overall? Did it make a really huge difference? I know we're talking about COVID, and that's a little bit of a, so since we were doing a trial thing, and I recognize the importance of having hotspots. I'm just trying to determine, is the additional 2 really worthwhile?
There are a number of libraries that only have the 2. Well, they may only, there are some that only have the 2, and then there are some that maybe have 1 extra one. So those 2 hotspots funded by the county have a significant. And I can give you a copy of the list that shows how many everybody has and if they'll be able to continue them or not. Monica, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Well,
to that?
in terms of addressing the impact of a specific, of the additional two, the data is a little hard to get at precisely, but what I can say is that there is a definite change in the hold time and wait time when we lose, even if we have other hotspots. So libraries that do have access to other funding or other hotspots, even currently at 7 for New Richmond, our wait times are so long that I would be seeking funding and grants. Even if you approve the additional 2, I don't think we have enough. I have people waiting sometimes 6 weeks to 2 months.
Oh, definitely.
Currently, just to get a hotspot, and you'd have to plan ahead. And in many cases, you don't have the ability in your personal life to know that your internet's going to be out and you won't have access for certain things. And to be asking people of the county to have to plan up to 2 months ahead of time to know if they're going to need that internet connectivity is really a difficult thing for us to be asking patrons to do. So I do think that the 2 additional make a huge difference simply in terms of access and wait times and giving people a little more flexibility in being able to know that they can have access in a timely manner.
With the hotspots, it's not a case of they sit on the shelf and wait for someone to come in. They are always, if they're sitting and waiting, it's because they're on the hold shelf waiting for somebody whose turn it is to come in and pick it up. They're not, I have people who will come in and say, oh, I can't get the hotspot today. You mean I can't just come in? It's not like a book on the shelf.
Correct.
So there's a total of 90 holds on the hotspots that are currently, as of 3 o'clock this afternoon, there's a total of 90 holds on the hotspots.
Not including the checkout.
Yeah, not including the checkout ones, no.
All right. Thank you for the information.
Thank you.
So, I mean, I would like to see us try to do something here. I guess I would look to Ken to see what I know you offered us a couple options for funding sources for these. I don't know what is the easiest, but it seems to me that there's definitely a demand. We, as a county, have talked about how we value broadband and internet access for folks. It's going to take a while. I see this as a small step for us to provide some access for folks. So if we were to go forward with this, of the choices you gave us, what would you recommend from a funding standpoint? From an administrative standpoint, what is easier?
Well, what I
Or makes
recommend
more
and what's
sense.
easier is 2 different things.
What makes most sense to you?
What's easier is just take it out of fund balance. Probably the right way to do it, though, is to amend the library funding resolution and levy for the additional $8,706.
And then we could amend that. If we vote today, we can amend, and that could be our budget for the next meeting
Yeah,
in
if-
November.
Yep,
County
so
board.
if you wanted to, I think the wording on the agenda is clear enough that you could request that a resolution be taken to the next county board meeting for funding of the library hotspots via an amendment to the library resolution.
Okay.
And then I would just create that resolution. It'll be on the November 1st agenda then with the vote from this committee as the authorizing vote for it.
Okay. So I guess I would make a motion to do what you just said.
Yeah. So the funding, I highlighted
Can I
the,
raise a point of order?
yeah, we should get a second on that if there is one.
Well, what, is this an actionable item? I don't see that as an,
Yep. Consideration of request for funding library hotspots. So that's the
so that isn't, okay.
the agenda item. So the methodology of doing that would be an amendment to the resolution for the funding. So I would deem that as within the notice requirement that's on the agenda.
Okay. So
Is there a second?
is there a second? Yeah, I don't know. Supervisor Counter? Is it-
Yes, for discussion, then I have a question.
Okay.
My question is, okay, if we do the adjustment to the for budget adjustment, Is the library levy exempt from the state's mandated, where you have the process to,
Yep.
where we're levy locked?
Correct, yeah. Library levy is exempt from the levy limits. So it doesn't affect any other part of the budget. It just raises the total amount that the county is going to levy by the $8,000. And that was the one point that I wanted to clarify then. So the dollar amounts that Barb was giving us don't match exactly with what we've funded before. Previously, it was $8,706. And we funded the Spring Valley and the Woodville libraries at different amounts because they have different contract providers that they went with. So we had done a different amount for them and a separate amount than for the other 9 libraries. So I just wanted to clarify your intention of what you wanted in the resolution. Is it exactly as it was last year, that column for library funding?
Yeah, I guess my intention would be to fund the 2 hotspots per library, so if that means that there's a different formula to fund those 2 for those libraries, then
Okay,
yes.
all right. Very good. Clarification's all I needed on that.
Supervisor Burning.
So that 8,000 would be 8,706, or it'd be more than that?
No, it'd be exactly the $8,706.
And that's on top of what's already being levied for libraries
Correct.
through Act 150.
Yep.
And so if we did that, that's in addition to, and that's what we need to fund them, is 8,706?
Yes.
Why don't we just take it out of undesignated fund instead of slapping more tax on our people right now?
Yep.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
Like,
Yep. So, and that is easier for me to do it that way.
Yeah.
The reason is, for one thing, it's an ongoing expense that we've had, so this will be the 5th year that we've had it. So typically, when you have ongoing expenses, I try not to take them out of the savings account. I try to match them with a revenue source. So that's why my recommendation is this methodology of funding.
Yeah,
Not to
so-
say that you can't decide differently.
so my follow-up is this something we're going to consider doing on a regular basis? Or is it, I mean, I know that's up to us, but I guess, informally without, well, I mean, I guess we're a committee, we can talk openly to each other. I mean, is this something you guys would want to consider as something that's regular? Because there's a lot of, it's not much, but it is, because every dollar right now is counting in this budget, and I'm halfway through it with my,
That's a lot of sticky
fun.
notes.
It's a lot of sticky notes, a lot of sleepless nights, not for this necessarily, but, because if we're going to do it on the regular, then we should come up with some sort of plan so that it's not just 2, and you've got servicing areas like River Falls that, they're surrounding, they have more funding. How do we make this more equal across the board so it's not just 2, and then my taxpayers are paying more for things distantly than, it just, we got to come up, if we're going to do this on the regular, we got to come up with something that's a little bit more fair regarding funding this regularly. So that's why I would say not to levy it against the taxpayers, since we don't have a plan for it. That's my rationale.
Yep. Just to clarify, it isn't actually levied against all the taxpayers. So your taxpayers actually aren't getting levied. So anyone within a library-funded community, if you're funding a library, you're not getting this tax. This is mostly hitting just the rural parts.
Oh, this is on the rural, just on the Act 150, this is in addition to
Yes.
in that region.
Correct.
Yeah, that still doesn't change the fact that it still needs to be.
Right.
You
It's
got-
actually the town's then subsidizing, if you go back to the other chart, it's actually the town subsidizing the blue columns. Usually it's the other way around, so maybe this is fair play, but
Yeah, and even that's not right either. I mean, if you think about it, a municipality should, yes, my neighbors should not be over subsidizing my
yeah.
library in that respect.
Sure.
Realize people anywhere in the county can go to any library and place a hold and check it out. I know I have residents who are normally Deer Park patrons, but because maybe of the wait time or they don't know how long it's going to be, will put their name on New Richmond's. They will put their name on Woodville's. Maybe they work in Hudson. There's no guarantee that it's just people in that immediate area who are getting a hot spot from that library. They can be from anywhere. They just have to be willing to drive and come to that library to pick it up and drive to return it. So that's a point to keep in mind. It's like with any materials. These just don't go through the courier. They have to actually come to the library and physically pick them up and return them. So just keep that in mind, that it's not just one location.
One more thing to add on, I do think it's important that if this is going to be ongoing, that we have some sort of plan built in place so that it's not just every year we're going off of a whim. That's not right to the taxpayers to do that each year in this regard, I think. Just, that's my 2 cents. I would like to see it come out of undesignated fund if we're going to do this, just so that we can come up with that. And maybe through our library committee, we could talk about what that looks like.
Supervisor Long?
I think it's probably most appropriate to add it to the library levy, so as an ongoing expense. And keep in mind, this is only for 2023. So we're going to have to come back and revisit this again next year, correct? For the 2024 budget. And the 2 was fairly arbitrary, I think, because it was a trial. We just wanted to see how it was going to work. And there's probably a better way of allocating it, but the other thing to keep in mind is as we hopefully are continuing to expand broadband in the county, that technically or long-term, the need for hotspots should diminish. So I don't know that we want to put anything in place in concrete. There's probably a little better way to allocate it, but I think for right now, the best thing moving forward would be to add it to the library levy and then reconsider it in 2023 with regard to the 2024 budget.
As far as the funding, so if your intention is that you want to continue funding hotspots every year, I would tie it to revenue and put it on the library levy. If your intent was, we're going to give them one more year, it's going to be the last year, we're going to give them notice right now that we're not going to fund it ongoing, then it's not an ongoing funding. Then out of fund balance would be perfectly fine because it's a one-time expense. That's how I kind of dictate between where things get funded from on my recommendations. And then just as a final note, every year when I bring back the library resolution, I bring it back based upon Act 150 requirements. I don't add anything extra. Supervisors have to ask for it. And there's a supervisor that wasn't on this year, that was on previous years, that had always asked for it. So, just so you know, it doesn't automatically go on. It has to be requested by a county board supervisor.
Yeah, I guess my intent would not be to say this is the last time and you're being given notice. Like, I feel like if there's still a need, so ongoing, I make a note to myself to ask to be added to the levy probably next year, moving forward. The library levy, not the general levy. But any other comments or discussion? Supervisor Long.
One other comment. I would suggest that if we're going to bring this resolution to the county board, I think that it's really important to provide more background information. And I would have appreciated to have some more of that information prior to the meeting tonight. So if we're going to ask the board to increase the library levy, we need to make sure that we provide them with the justification and the documentation that would support continuing the hotspot funding.
That's a good request. Makes sense. All right, any other discussion? All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. The what?
There was no amendments.
No amendments, no. Just basic. Okay, our next item is a resolution adopting 2023 budget and establishing tax levy. Ken.
All right. So this resolution does list out the special purpose library aids. So just note that that will need to increase by $8,706. So based upon the last action, I will change this resolution to include that whenever you guys get around to making the motion to approve it. Otherwise, what this resolution recommends to the county board is adoption of the 2023 budget as currently printed. I did make 3 changes to the budget that I wanted to go over with you. One of them was from the Committee of the Whole. It is way deep in there. I'll get to it just a second here. Okay, so this was on page 200 of the budget, 243 in the packet. This is the resource land and water conservation. This was the change that was requested at the Committee of the Whole. $29,000 was added in. It was added into the expenses. It basically took the recommended expenditure amounts back to what had been requested. This was out of Ellen's budget. Where the changes came in then on the revenue side to offset that was the fund balance applied went back to $100,000. This is the one where we said, you know, the funds are starting to get smaller, so I had wanted to start to taper that off. But we're going to take it back to $100,000, and we'll have to face the ramifications of that within the next 2 years probably. And then I increased other conservation revenues from $65,000 to $69,000. That's basically where the tree sales go in. And if you look at the past history, 69 is probably a more accurate dollar amount that covered the last $4,000. So that was one of the changes that was recommended at the Committee of the Whole. The other 2 changes, relatively small. One of them is related to an agenda item that's last on the agenda tonight in anticipation of your approval of that because it's fairly routine, and Phil probably didn't even need to come tonight to sit through all this, but it's on the authorized FTEs. We'll get to that in just a second. I just want to make sure I spell out anything that I change in the budget, so. All right, so on the authorized FTEs, well, one of them's here. Within Health and Human Services, this isn't Phil's, this is the other change that I had. We moved one position from behavioral health to the CCS program. It's the same grade level position, it's just switching where that supervisory position is. It's actually still going to do a third or a quarter, I think a third, supervising back in behavioral health still, but 2/3 of it's going to move to the CCS part of the program. Just a redistribution of the middle management tier within those 2 divisions of HHS. So that change is reflected on here. It has really no budgetary implications. It's just shifting from one area to another area. And then the other one was in Justice Support Services, where we're adding a position and eliminating a position. So it's right here. So it's -1 +1. It has a very small dollar amount. I did not adjust the budget amount, the dollar amount. It's fairly minor, but I did change the authorized FTEs, and that's the last item on tonight's agenda. but in anticipation of that change. So those were the three changes that I've made. Otherwise, it's the presentation, I think the 4 hours that we spent at the committee of the whole. So if you want me to go back over that, we can. Otherwise, I just entertain questions that you might have on the resolution approving the budget and the levy limit.
Supervisor Burning. I think we're a committee, so we can talk before we have a.
Correct.
Okay, so I'm about halfway through this. We got this Monday at the county board meeting. We went to a committee of the whole, and now we're here. It's pouring through this is not easy, and like doing it as an overnight project also didn't work out for me because there was something I forgot to do at my office for 2.5 hours. So I ended up doing that before the committee of the whole. Is it possible that we could have another committee of the whole between now and November 1 and then have a finance committee or admin committee meeting prior to the regular county board meeting to approve any additional changes? I would venture to guess that I'm not the only one that's in the same boat going through this. So that's what I would ask, is if we could do something like that, please. That's with a smiley face emoji.
Comments, thoughts? Supervisor Long.
Back in the day, the way I understand it is the county board actually developed the budget when there was a different administrator structure, and it was, from what I understand, an incredibly tedious process that if you asked any of those people, they would say they would never want to go through again. So the structure that we have in place puts that responsibility on the county administrator to develop this budget. I don't believe that it's our job to get into the nitty-gritty weeds. We have incredible department heads that do a good job of getting into the weeds, and I think it's our job to look at this budget overall, know what the impact is, and if there are certain areas that we feel are questionable, we certainly have the opportunity to get into the weeds, but to go into every page and every number, I don't feel is our job, and I don't think it's necessary.
Comment received, but I'm still requesting it.
So from a process standpoint, I mean, are you making a motion? Essentially, would we need a motion from Supervisor Burning to ask for another committee of the whole meeting and then another administration committee? Is that from a process standpoint what we would have to do?
Yeah.
If that's what the path that we're,
Yeah,
I'm
rules
just
and
trying to think
Rules
through
and
that.
bylaws for calling a committee of the whole. So the county board chair can call a committee of the whole, or there's a methodology to overrule the county board chair. There's always a checks and balance system. There's a request process for that, and a certain number of supervisors have to sign on in order to make that happen. So hearing the county board chair's comments, if he doesn't approve it, that would be your alternative. So a motion here to have a committee of the whole probably wouldn't be
Right, so the motion
appropriate.
would more be to not approve this budget if that's,
Yeah, not even that.
whatever,
So,
you just
yeah.
need more time.
yeah,
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, yes, I think so. And with all due respect to the chair of the county board, and I have a lot of respect for Chairman Long, I don't think it's right for me to vote yes on this if I don't know exactly what I'm voting for, whether granular or 30,000 foot view of it. So that's my request. If it's obliged, great. If it's not, we'll roll with what that means. So no big deal.
Yeah. From a process standpoint, your recommendation tonight is forwarding it to the county board. And so it's not an endorsement that you're not going to have changes on November 1. It's really just moving the process on. So I think from that perspective, you could even still have a committee of the whole and ask for changes, even after it's recommended from this committee. A resolution coming out of committee is just part of our rules and bylaws processes. So it gets it to that November 1st meeting. It does have to be on that November 1st agenda. I've already published it in the paper. Everyone's expecting it, looking forward to that date. But whether you recommend it tonight or you recommended it another night is fine, but just know either night it's going to be a formality, that it's just getting it in front of the county board for action.
Yep, Supervisor Long.
I'll add to that, I mean, if I get enough requests for an additional committee of the whole to review the budget in more detail, I'd certainly consider that.
Okay. I mean, given that conversation, although I feel confident in this budget, I think we do, I know we just receive it. We do have time to still review it and the items, and we can bring those up at the board meeting, correct? So I would make a motion that we recommend adopting 2023 budget and establishing tax levy. Second by Supervisor Long. Okay. Any other discussion?
Just wait, one other real quick comment, and I've had the opportunity to review a lot of budgets, so I kind of know what I'm looking for, and that makes a big difference because we have a number of new supervisors who, this is kind of a new process too. So we also need to be accommodating for their requests as well.
And just as a reminder, I'm adding $8,706 to that bottom line.
Yes, I'm including that in my motion.
Yeah.
With the addition of the
Yep.
$8,706. That is included in your second, Supervisor Long?
Yes.
Okay. All right, any other comments? Supervisor Burning.
I just want to know what the motion is exactly.
The motion is to recommend the 2023 budget, adoption of the 2023 budget and establishment of the tax levy to the county board.
Correct.
Okay. Seeing no other discussion, we'll vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry to be so difficult. I mean, I'm not sorry.
Just trying to figure out the process here. Okay.
I'll hopefully do it with a smile.
Next item, consideration of request to create countywide compost and recycling center. Ken, you're walking us through this.
Let me just catch up. We also have the new Richmond City Administrator here this evening. So if you have any questions that I'm unable to answer about the request, I'm sure Noel will be able to answer those. All right. So we received a written request from the mayor, from the city of New Richmond, that the county should really think about taking over a county-wide perspective on brush and recycling. The short answer for that is, having worked in city government for 20 years and run compost sites, I can sympathize with the issues that they're probably having, because they're very expensive, they're problematic, and I have no interest in the county getting involved in a county-wide composting site. So my recommendation is to kindly decline New Richmond's request. And Supervisor Hanson wanted to relay his apologies. He was unable to make it this evening. He had planned on attending and speaking on this, but he called me and was unable to make it.
Okay. Any conversation or discussion? Or is there a motion?
I don't think you need anything. You can just die, can't it? With no motion?
I have a
Supervisor
question,
Wong.
and this is on a prior conversation with what to do with the brush and the leaves and the twigs and everything that we collect. What do we do with it? Where does it go? What happens to it?
Yeah. Well, back in the 90s, we were able to burn all the brush. And so the city that I worked for, we burnt it. We'd have big bonfires about twice a year, and we'd burn it all down. And the ash was fairly easy to distribute across the site. The DNR changed their rules and made it more restrictive to burning anything that was brought from another site. If you cut it down on your property, you can burn it, but if you move it to another site, you're not allowed to burn it then. And so local municipalities were not allowed to do that. So the only option then was to chip it. And so you can't run this amount of brush through a chipper. We always had to bring in a tub grinder, which is what they dump houses into and crush houses. And so with a big loader, they would load for days on end into a tub grinder once a year at the cost of tens of thousands of dollars, and that's for one city of about 10,000 people. So I can't imagine how much more we would have on a county-wide basis. And you just end up with huge piles of mulch, and it'll slowly decompose over time. But you need a lot of property. We had a 20-acre site for the city I worked for, and we were looking to expand. We were looking for adjacent property so we could expand the site because we were filling it up with wood chips. And the wood chips aren't clean enough that homeowners can come and take it and use it on their landscaping. They're not colored, they're full of a lot of dirt. They're not really landscaping quality wood chips. So there's a limited use for the end product from this. So those are some of the challenges that I've experienced, and part of the reason I would recommend not doing anything. But to your question, they just sit there. You grind them up and they sit there.
Oh, his mic was still on.
Yeah, no. Okay. No other comments on that? So based on the agenda item, it's a consideration of a request, so do we need to take formal action on that? Oh.
You know, the only thing is the city of New Richmond asked for a response back by the end of October. So, I mean, you can take no action, and that would be my response back to them, is that the county's declined to take any action on the issue. So, whatever your preference is on how to deal with this issue.
Well, being part and also community development, I know we also deal with the annual recycling and all the things and the costs that have been borne on us. I mean, it's going downhill as it is. You know, we can't afford to do it more than the one time at this point, and trying to stay within budget because the cost of doing it is just becoming astronomical. But the need, you know, I don't see that it currently to go into the expense of trying to deal with this on a basis without first doing kind of a study to see how to handle this on a county-wide basis. And I can tell you that the rural areas suffer considerably with when these sites shut down, where there's a lot of stuff that's left in ditches. We find tires, we find couches, appliances, and there are remedies that are currently available even within our own county for doing some of the recycling, that in some of the places will accept some of this at no cost, and their business is not through the other municipalities right now. But possibly taking a look at all of these other alternatives and coming up with what's already out there that might be able to work with some of these businesses. I know there's a grinding place just north of New Richmond, between New Richmond and Star Prairie, that just opened up a business. And I'm not exactly sure what material they can take, but I guess the point of it is taking a look at what do we have out there currently, and maybe having a request through community development to just take a look at what programs are possible, and come to the table and talk to us a little bit, so we know what's there, and if there's other alternatives to how to handle this without making it another thing that the county has to deal with. If we were to acquire all the information about places that can manage this and put it together and get it to the different communities and within our own recycling program, might be a better and an easier alternative, and definitely more cost effective.
All right, thank you. So I guess that based on the conversation at this time, I think we are essentially not going to move forward with that request. It doesn't sound like we need a formal action, so it doesn't seem like we're ready at this point.
Did you say we had someone from New Richmond here? I would certainly, like to hear from them, just
Yeah,
before
if you have comments, yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, good evening. I'm Noah Winfeld. I'm the city administrator for the city of New Richmond. Just for a little bit of background content on the letter itself, this conversation kind of started in response to yard waste. We did look at other counties in Wisconsin that do offer a centralized location. I would say that we've spoken with 2 other cities and 3 other townships who also are supportive of this request. We certainly didn't include them on the letter. We don't want to speak on their behalf, but I think to Supervisor Counter's point, just really wanted to kind of start the conversation to see, could this work? If not, at least we looked into it. We certainly understand this isn't a problem that's going to be addressed today, next week, your 2023 budget. We realize that. But to understand it's a growing community. It affects whether you live in a city, whether you live in the township. There isn't a great solution for it. It is, we have a compost site in New Richmond that our city residents can use, but we're also turning away township and village residents. We have people coming from the Twin Cities looking to dump stuff in New Richmond, River Falls. So New Richmond's had to scale back our hours. River Falls has had to do the same thing. But it's not just the, what do you do with tree branches? It's you drive down a town road and you see a tire in the ditch or a futon frame, and if the compost site is closed, well, I'll just drive down the road a quarter mile and throw it into a farmer's field. You have township residents that may just burn it, and you have fewer and fewer options for where to take this product. So, while we started the conversation looking at yard waste, we really also thought about there's growing demand for what do you do with electronics, kind of look holistically. So I think, obviously we have our own compost site in New Richmond. We're fortunate enough to do that. We've seen that residents are willing to pay for that. They really just need a place to take things to. They don't mind paying for it. Similar to the Clean Sweep program, if someone has to pay money for paint cans or a tire, they're willing to pay that fee. Obviously, you want to make sure you're at least breaking even. You don't want to be losing money on an operation. But really, our request was just to see where if there's interest in pursuing it. Is there a subcommittee that would be interested in pursuing, or sitting down with some members from some of the local townships in the county to see if we can come up with something that could work. And if not, we currently kind of have a hodgepodge of every single village, town, city kind of does their own thing. Is that sustainable as the community continues to grow? So, again, we certainly don't expect, I'm not going to go to the mayor tomorrow and say, yep, they voted, they're going to do it next week. But really just to say, is there interest in looking into this? I know the mayor has spoken to 4 county supervisors who aren't here at this committee, who are supportive of the request. And like I said, we have spoken to other cities and towns that said, yeah, we'd come to the table and see, can we come up with something that could work? So, but that does take time. I know you're all busy. There's staff are busy as well, but we realize that we believe it is a need, though, that isn't going to go away anytime soon.
All right, and thank you for your comments. Are any questions? Or it seems to me that this is a conversation that makes more sense at community development, ongoing, to bring folks together to have that discussion. So I mean, I don't think anyone wants to ignore the fact that there are residents that in the county that need a place to put their items and things like that. So I like Supervisor Counter's suggestion as well, to just have that conversation, and perhaps community development can take this up for discussion, or not necessarily this item starting the recycling or compost side right now, but at least having those conversations to figure out how community residents can find a place to put their items.
We can invite those list of people. I'm sorry. And we can invite a list of the communities that you've been talking with to be involved with those conversations.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right.
Thanks for
you.
your time.
Thanks. Okay, next item, resolution approving water main easement between St. Croix County and the city of Hudson. Amber.
So St. Croix County is the owner, obviously, of the real property located at 1101 Carmichael Road in Hudson, known as the Government Center. As a part of the Government Center expansion project, the city of Hudson requires access to the public water main on the property owned by St. Croix County in order to repair or maintain the public water main. Corporation Counsel Amos worked with the City of Hudson attorney Nick Vivian to finalize the easement document, and the City of Hudson approved the easement on October 3rd of 2022.
All right, thank you. Oh, Supervisor Counter.
Just one of the things I found out tonight, so this easement that's being described here is already an existing line that goes across the property, and so the easement is just catching up with paperwork for an existing line. Is that correct?
I understand it to be correct because of what Administrator Witt said, but I don't have any personal knowledge of that.
Okay, other questions? And do we have a motion?
You can see the fire hydrants out there already.
Move to approve the resolution approving the water main easement between St. Croix County and the city of Hudson.
All right, motion by Supervisor Burning, second by Supervisor Counter. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Next item, resolution amending personnel policies and personnel handbook. Audrey.
So we had 3 policies to update this month. Military leave really updated the language to clarify the calculation of time an employee is eligible for the county military pay based on their FTE and their current schedule. So just to kind of make things more fair and consistent across the board, as we do have some employees that work rotating schedules of 84 hours every 2 weeks versus those employees that work maybe an 80-hour, 40 hours per week or 80-hour payroll week. So that's the main update to that policy. The expense reimbursement policy, we combined the mileage reimbursement policy with the expense reimbursement policy and updated language to coincide with current practices for submitting reimbursement requests, that they are now submitted online using our Oracle platform versus submitting paper requests, reimbursements. And provided extra clarification on what is considered a reimbursable expense and what isn't. And then the last one is the information technology acceptable use policy, in which we just added some new definitions for additional clarification within the policy.
Thank you. Supervisor Counter.
First question I have was, there was a sentence in your description of the changes on 2.17.7 for reemployment. And I'm talking about the descriptive portion of it.
Yep.
As I was reading through it, it seemed like it was an unfinished sentence.
It's probably the way that I added it in there to show what the previous language was versus what the new language is. So it used to say, should a county employee enter long-term military duty on account of service in the uniformed services, people on our groups that kind of look at these policies and provide ideas thought that, what does long-term military duty mean? That they wanted a different kind of clarification on that. And realistically, long-term could mean anything. So we just updated that to say, should a county employee be absent from work on account of service in the uniformed services? So there is more to that definition within the policy. It goes, they shall retain employment rights as provided by the Uniformed Services Employment and Reemployment Rights Act, or USERRA. So it's just kind of updating that language to provide that clarification of what long-term really means.
Yep, go ahead.
One last question, and when I was reading for hotel reimbursements, if I understood it right, then they are only reimbursed if it's put on the government credit card. So if they have something that they have to pay for out of pocket for hotel, overnight stay or something, that's not a reimbursable expense if it comes out of their pocket. It has to be on the government credit card.
Yeah, so preference is that they pay using the P card or the government, or the county credit card, and then that's not reimbursable, right? Because you're already using county funds to pay that. And so we want them using that card versus their own personal card to pay for hotel stays. If there are incidentals that need to be put on their own credit card, then that would be their responsibility, and those incidentals wouldn't be reimbursable to the employee. The main reason for kind of pushing to use the P card, the county credit card versus their personal credit card, is all of the benefits that you get using your own card, whether you are getting mileage or points for airlines or points for gift cards, and the tax implications on that. So does that answer your whole question?
Now, I'm not totally familiar with how this all works, but if they're out, do they always have a P card, or is a P card, what I'm thinking of is the person that gets put in a position where it's a last minute deal that they didn't realize is, something went down. They got in a blizzard on their way back from a meeting and they need to do they always have a P card or not?
So any manager can really request a P card for an employee if there are extenuating circumstances or things like a snowstorm or something like that. Yes, we would reimburse them. This is really to prevent people from getting those perks or bonuses from their own credit cards, because we do get rebates for our credit card, so we would prefer to use that. And a lot of people can get cash back now, and so that becomes an issue if you're traveling a lot and you're getting all these cashback rewards or miles or points or what have you on your own personal credit card, because we would want those for the county so we can use those for other county purchases.
Any other discussion? Do you have a motion?
I'll move to approve the resolution.
All right, motion by Supervisor Long.
Second.
Second by Supervisor Burning. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. And then the final item, business item today, consideration of reclassification request for Compass Assessor Treatment Court Case Manager. I don't think,
So Justice Support Services requested a reclassification of their current treatment court caseworker to a treatment court case manager. The new manager position would take on the same responsibilities and job duties of the caseworker, but it would add responsibilities of facilitating cognitive behavioral groups with treatment court participants. And it would also monitor participants through GPS tracking. The position would also require 3 years of additional experience beyond what the caseworker position currently does. They would also require the incumbent to obtain their Compass and MRT license within 6 months of hire. The current caseworker position is graded at a grade 58, and it is my recommendation to approve the reclassification at a grade of 59 for the manager position.
all right, any questions? No questions? Is there a motion? All right, Supervisor Long makes a motion. Supervisor Cowner, second? Second. Other discussion? All right, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Request for future agenda items. Any supervisors with a request? Doesn't look like it. All right, announcements and correspondence? No. All right, date of our next meeting, November 8th, and we will adjourn at 6:10. Thank you.